the Greater Bay Area project, how much of an impact do you think it will have on Hong Kong's economy and in boosting that number up again?
Well, first of all, in 2018, originally we expected much better growth because we did 3.8% in 2017, and in the first quarter of 2018, we actually made 4.7. That was very remarkable for an economy like Hong Kong, which is very mature. So actually, Shenzhen's growth has surpassed us for quite some years already. But I think the latest statistics, depending on the currency, Shenzhen has probably also overtaken Hong Kong in terms of total GDP, the gross domestic product. But of course, Hong Kong could not have a growth that we have seen in the mainland of China, because as I said, we are a very mature economy. But we will continue to do well with this Greater Bay Area development, particularly with Shenzhen. Our relationship with Shenzhen is almost unique. First, physically, we are neighbors.
Yes.
So for those who may not know this, every day through the 6 land border crossings between Hong Kong and Shenzhen, and now also the high-speed train at the West Kowloon terminus, over 650,000 passenger trips on a daily basis. So this indicates that proximity and that frequency of travel between people in Hong Kong and Shenzhen. Secondly, we have a great complementarity. I would say that in the last 4 decades, in the opening up and reform of China, Hong Kong played a role in the sense that we are sort of bringing in capital, expertise, and systems to the mainland of China, including Shenzhen. And that's why Shenzhen has done so well amongst the several special economic zones created in the late 1970s. But looking ahead, our relationship with Shenzhen should be one of really genuine partnership and complementarity. So take research and development. Now that in the Greater Bay Area Outline Development Plan, great emphasis has been put on developing an international innovation and technology hub in the Greater Bay Area, very much like the Silicon Valley, and hopefully of a scale bigger than the Silicon Valley. The complementarity lies in Hong Kong being a research hub, because we have very good universities. 4 of our universities are amongst the top 100. In fact, the latest ranking shows that 3 of our universities are amongst the top 50 in the world. So we have very good research capabilities. So with the government investment, we could grow this research capability, and we could help them with translational research and even incubation in our science park and cyberport. But these translational research needs prototyping and production. And that is where Shenzhen comes in very nicely, because they have all this advanced manufacturing capability. And of course, the business wants to scale up. And when it wants to scale up, they need raising of capital. So we will welcome them back to Hong Kong because of the international financial services that we are offering, especially the new listing regime we introduced last April, which I just mentioned in my speech. So this is a way that I expect we will work together with Shenzhen and also beyond Shenzhen into the other 8 mainland cities in the Greater Bay Area.
It's a good partnership. Now, in January, when you were in Davos, in the cold, snowy mountains of Davos, where you met Peter, you also spoke to some of my colleagues at Bloomberg TV, and you said you weren't too optimistic about a US-China trade deal lasting. How do you feel about it now?
Well, how do I feel about it is every morning on online news, I try to read what President Trump is tweeting.
Do you check it? Do you check Twitter every morning?
No, we have online news that tracked what the U.S. president was saying. And last night, he was shouting to the media saying that things were good, I think. China was good, something like that.
Do you believe him?
No, I shouldn't say anything commenting on another head of state, but I certainly want to see this trade discussion leading to some positive outcome. But as I acknowledged in my speech, I don't think the problem will go away just like that. We will probably be seeing more tension in other areas. So the best strategy of Hong Kong is we don't sit back and wait until the external environment either go up or go down. We do the right things for Hong Kong, creating more new markets, adopting some new technologies. Actually, we need new culture, new mindset more than the new tools. So that's what I want to lead Hong Kong to. Yeah.
Now, for Hong Kong to remain a world city, you did refer to it as a world city, it does need a free and a friendly business environment. Now, a law the government is proposing, the extradition law, which means you can send people to other jurisdictions like the mainland, has been met with considerable pushback from the business community, not just in Hong Kong, but business delegations in the EU, in the US. Do you understand their concern, and is there a chance you would amend or even consider dropping this proposal?
Now, let me just explain and clarify that this action that we are taking to introduce amendments to the Fugitive Offenders Ordinance and the Mutual Legal Assistance on Criminal Matters Ordinance is to plug a loophole in the existing legal framework, which we are unable to sort of process and facilitate the extradition of fugitive offenders to another legal jurisdiction unless we have an agreement in place. And we have signed only agreement with 20 jurisdictions so far, because it's not easy to enter in that sort of agreement. And then last year, we have a case right in front of us, which has caused a lot of public outcry of why a Hong Kong resident being suspected of murdering another Hong Kong resident in another jurisdiction came back to Hong Kong, and we could not do anything about it. So prompted by this case, well, we started to look around whether there are solutions, and there is in fact a solution which has been practiced in other jurisdictions, including, I think, the United Kingdom, and that is on a case-by-case approach, but subject to the protection of human rights and procedural safeguards. So what we are doing is just simple as that. And that should not be seen as impeding business freedom or undermining business environment. I would say that's quite the opposite, because we don't want Hong Kong to become a haven for fugitive offenders, for public security. But having said that, my colleague, the Secretary for Security, has been going around the city to collate opinions and to listen to concerns expressed by the business sector. So I could not disclose more this morning on what we are going to do, except to say that we are doing this with a very good purpose. And if there are concerns, it is obligatory of the government to address those concerns.
Now, there were a couple of incidents last year. You know, journalist Victor Mallet not being granted a visa, opposition lawmakers being disqualified, and this creates a bit of a perception that the one country, two system framework is being eroded. It's a perception, but it could lead to a change in Hong Kong's trading status with the US, for example. Does that perception worry you?
Well, it does. That's why earlier this week I spent an hour with a visiting congressional delegation on the US-China working group comprised of 6 congressmen. I tried to address their concerns and explain the situation. It is very pertinent of you, Mallika, to refer to these incidents and the consequences of perception. I would accept and admit that there is a perception issue, but every act that this government has taken is in strict accordance of the law. And every decision taken by the government is subject to review by the judiciary. And there should be no doubt about the independence of the judiciary. In fact, international ranking, year after year, put Hong Kong very high on the world ranking in terms of the independence of the judiciary and the rule of law. We may not have enough time to go through each and every of these cases, but I want to assure investors in the audience that we are sort of very strict in terms of complying with the rule of law, and we have an independent judiciary to make sure that we are doing exactly so.
Last year, when you and I spoke again at the start of Invest, I had asked you about when Hong Kong may legalize same-sex marriage. And you had said you understand there are calls for it, but you couldn't give a timeline. But there has been some progress since then, because Hong Kong has said it will make dependent visas available for spouses, of same-sex partners from overseas who want to come here. Are we any closer to Hong Kong legalizing same-sex marriage? Because this will, of course, help attract top talent from around the world, and the business community wants to see that.
I'm afraid not, because this remains a very controversial issue in Hong Kong. But the relaxation in the immigration arrangements that you have mentioned actually does help, although that arose from the government losing a case in court.
Yes.
But in a way, that does
couple,
help to address that issue of attracting overseas talents, because now, under the immigration policy, we abide by this court ruling. And this is also an indication of the rule of law in Hong Kong. And we will give dependent visas to the same-sex partners of people who come in to work with us.
We can't have a conversation about Hong Kong and its economy without talking about property and housing. Yes, of course, right? So we saw prices come down last year, but we have seen them pick up again just in the last month or so. So 2 questions. Do you think the correction is already over? And you're allocating so much more land to public sector housing. Will that, in the long run, squeeze the land available for the private sector and again push prices up?
Well, first of all, I can understand why whenever I gave an interview, this question will pop up. So housing and land and property prices.
Yes.
Because I've been telling people that regardless of how much I have done as a chief executive, I would not be a very good chief executive without trying to tackle and hopefully effectively tackle this housing problem in Hong Kong. You are right. In terms of the property prices, since last August, we have seen correction up to about 9 to 10%. But from January this year, so far we have 2 months, January and February, the downward trend has seems to cease, and we are seeing some upward movements again. So to put it simply, I'm worried because affordability is a big issue for the people of Hong Kong. But at the same time, Hong Kong being a free economy, Hong Kong opens her doors and welcome investors and talents to come in. The only solution, in my view, is to increase the government role and functions. So in 2018, I have made a few, I would say, very fundamental policy changes in our housing area. One is I have sort of delinked the pricing of subsidized sale flats built by the government, that is a housing authority and a housing society, from private property prices. So there will not be that anxiety that even people who want to buy from a government sale program will have to do catching up because they don't know how fast the private property prices will go. But now they have no worry. As long as I could build with land available, they could buy. Because the prices are set in strict accordance with affordability, which is the median household income in Hong Kong. And that's why the latest batch of home ownership sale flats, we are selling at a discount of 48%, I think. Yeah. So the second is, of course, to allocate more land for the public housing program. So now it's 70%. The third is to create a housing ladder where different income and asset families could also access the subsidized sale program. So we now have the green subsidized housing for previously rental housing residents to buy once their asset and income situation improves. The other is traditional home ownership scheme flats. And then we have the starter home for the higher income families to buy. But the fact is every sale was oversubscribed by many, many times.
Always, yeah.
So the shortage is very, very acute. So the solution lies in finding land to build. And after a long period of public engagement, there's a task force on land supply, which has submitted their report to me. I have accepted wholesale every recommendation in the report, so that we now have a multi-pronged approach to provide land. The longer-term solution lies inevitably in reclamation outside of the Victoria Harbour. So earlier this week, my Secretary for Development has announced details about the artificial islands to be reclaimed outside of Victoria Harbour. And I really hope I will continue to appeal to the politicians to support this vision to find more land to build.